In this part, I've added functionality, so when the user presses Get a Quote button, it renders a quote and it reads it out loud as well. To use this functionality, I had to install third-party library, which uses System Speech Engine if it's available. For easier management, I've organized all the logic text-to-speech into separate file in utils folder. For now, I have created 4 functions. First, we'll return a promise and it will detect whether or not speech engine is available. The second will set default settings for speech. The third will actually do the speech. And the fourth is empty for now, but it will detect what kind of language is available. I will need this information for settings page, and I may add some more functions as I go. So I import the needed function to the component that is going to use it, and I pass whatever I need to do it. So over here I pass the text and it reads it. I also send the initial quote to a speech engine from lifecycle method component didMount. So the moment a main application page is loaded, user will hear press get a quote button. I set up a call to a speech function as a conditional. Only if this property is speech engine detected it will run. But before that, when application loads, I run a check in AppWrapper whether or not speech engine is available. And if I get success, meaning that speech engine is available, I set the state of is speech engine detected to true, and I pass it as a property to main application page. So as you saw, I have a conditional there. When this property is true, then I run speech engine. If it's false, that speech is not gonna run. So now, if user toggles auto mode, respectively timer will launch and all the quotes will be read automatically with the interval. However, this works great only when application is on the foreground. The next step is make it work on the background and properly handle it. In the logic, when I'm changing the quotes, adjusting quotes array and so forth, I'm using everything based on set state. The problem is, with React Native application, set state only runs when application is on the foreground. When application goes on the background or in an active state, set state stops working. It sort of works, but based on my experiments, I can imagine that it kind of creates a queue of all the events. And the moment the application comes up to foreground, it starts executing that queue very fast. So in order to make this application working properly, I have to follow or detect what state or application state this application has at the moment, which means is it on the foreground or is it on the background, and adjust the logic accordingly. And that means I have to create logic for 2 cases. When application is on the foreground, so it will be visually represented in red, and the second is when application goes to the background, when I don't need to render anything, but I still want to have the timer running and reading the quotes and all the logic that comes along with it works accordingly. In this part, I'm going to be investigating how to handle application logic when application is on the background and when application is on the foreground. As I mentioned earlier, set state is not working when application goes to background, so I need a condition which says which logic to execute on the foreground and which logic to execute on the background. Looking forward, in order to handle my interval timer, I'm going to be using a third-party library called React Native Background Timer, which appears to be working fairly decent, at least for this application and this case. It appears that there is a slightly different use for Android and iOS. I'm not going to be worrying about it right now. My focus is on Android. The application state handling I really only need in MainAppPage, but I have decided to go ahead and add it to AppWrapper because this way, if something will change, I decide to modify application later, I can pass the state as a prop to the component that needs it. I've added AppState as an import from React Native. So I've created a function which essentially runs the listener for AppState and returns the state that application currently in. And that could be foreground, background, or inactive if it's iOS. The implementation of this function is very similar to what I used for dimensions. And then I take this state and pass to children components. And then in main application page, I'm going to be using component did_update lifecycle method to detect AppState prop change. And with that change, I'm going to be changing the value of component variable this.appState and use it in my logic where it's needed. So now I can actually see what's happening with the application. If I place my application to the background, it tells me it's going to the background. If I call it back from the background to active state, it will tell me that.